In December 2015, Sarah Thompson, a college student at SUNY Plattsburgh, decided to take a break from her studies and visit her grandmother's old cabin near Lake Champlain. The cabin was isolated, surrounded by dense woods blanketed in snow. Her grandmother had passed away years ago, but she often spoke fondly of the place where she spent her childhood winters. On her first night there, as the wind howled through the trees, Sarah noticed something strange. Every time she tried to sleep, she heard faint whispers coming from outside. At first, she thought it might be the wind or branches scraping against the walls, but the voices grew clearer over time, soft, guttural murmurs that seemed almost human. One evening, after a heavy snowfall, Sarah ventured outside to investigate. She saw footprints leading away from the cabin into the forest, though no one else had been with her. Following them, she stumbled upon an ancient stone altar half buried under the snow. Etched into its surface were symbols resembling pagan runes. Suddenly the air turned colder, and the whispers became louder, forming words. "Leave, this is ours." Terrified, Sarah ran back to the cabin and locked herself inside. That night, the whispers filled the house, growing more insistent. Shadows moved across the walls, even when no light source could explain them. In her desperation, she called her mother, who revealed a dark secret about the cabin. It had once been used for occult rituals by a group of settlers in the 1800s. They had summoned a malevolent entity known only as the Winter Wraith, which preyed on anyone who dared disturb its domain. By morning, Sarah managed to flee the cabin, abandoning everything except her phone. When authorities returned later, they found the interior completely untouched, but the altar in the woods had vanished, leaving behind only fresh snow. To this day, locals avoid the area, claiming they can still hear the whispers carried by the wind. John Carter, a truck driver, was traveling along Interstate 90 during a brutal blizzard in January 2017. Visibility was near zero, and his GPS kept glitching, forcing him to pull off onto a deserted side road. He spotted a small diner up ahead, its neon sign flickering weakly amidst the storm. Inside, the diner felt oddly warm, despite the freezing temperatures outside. A single waitress greeted him, her face pale and hollow-eyed. She served him coffee without speaking, then disappeared into the kitchen. As John sipped his drink, he noticed another customer sitting in the corner, a man wrapped in a tattered black coat, staring directly at him. His eyes glowed faintly red in the dim light. Unnerved, John finished his meal quickly and prepared to leave. But when he stepped outside, the storm had worsened, and his truck wouldn't start. Panicked, he returned to the diner, only to find it empty. The waitress and the mysterious man were gone, as if they'd never existed. Yet the smell of burnt flesh lingered in the air. Hours passed, and exhaustion began to overwhelm him. Desperate, he climbed into the diner's storage room to wait out the storm. There he discovered a series of handwritten notes scrawled on the walls in what appeared to be dried blood. Each note described someone else trapped in the same predicament, each ending with the phrase, "It will come for you." As dawn approached, John finally managed to restart his truck and drive away. Hours later, he reached safety, but not before catching a glimpse of the glowing-eyed man standing in the middle of the highway, watching him go. Years later, John refuses to speak about that night, haunted by dreams of the demon in the storm. Locals swear that the abandoned diner still stands, though no one dares approach it anymore. In February 2020, Emma Larson attended her cousin Rachel's wedding in a remote lodge nestled deep within the Boundary Waters Canoe Area wilderness. The ceremony took place outdoors, surrounded by towering pines dusted with snow. Despite the beauty of the setting, an unsettling atmosphere hung over the event. Several guests claimed to have seen a figure dressed in white wandering among the trees, though no one could confirm its existence. Later that night, during the reception, Rachel went missing. Her husband, Daniel, searched frantically, calling for her in the darkness. Eventually, he stumbled upon a frozen lake nearby, where he found Rachel standing motionless at the edge, clad in her wedding gown. Her skin was deathly pale, and her lips moved silently, as though whispering prayers. Before Daniel could reach her, Rachel turned toward him, her eyes wide and vacant. Then she plunged into the icy water without hesitation. Diving in after her, Daniel fought desperately to save her, but the current pulled her deeper. By the time rescuers arrived, both bodies were lost beneath the ice. Weeks later, search teams recovered Rachel's body, perfectly preserved in the frigid waters. However, Daniel's remains were never found. Local legends tell of a frozen bride, a vengeful spirit cursed to wander the wilderness forever, luring unsuspecting lovers to their doom. Some say Rachel wasn't human at all. That night, she was merely the ghost's vessel, seeking revenge on those who dared intrude on her solitude. To this day, hikers report seeing a woman in white drifting through the woods during winter storms, her voice carried by the wind, calling out for love in a language long forgotten. In January 2006, a couple named David and Jennifer Parker decided to take advantage of the winter solitude by renting a remote cabin nestled deep within the Devil's Ridge Mountains of Colorado. The cabin was advertised as rustic yet cozy, a perfect getaway from the hustle and bustle of city life. However, what they found there would haunt them forever. Upon arrival, the Parkers noticed an unsettling stillness about the area. There were no other cabins nearby, only dense pine forests blanketed in snow. Inside, the cabin felt oddly cold, despite the wood-burning stove roaring with flames. Strange scratches could be heard coming from the walls at night, which they initially dismissed as animals or branches scraping against the structure. On the third evening, Jennifer woke up to find something strange. Her husband wasn't in bed. She called out his name, but there was no response. Panic set in when she realized he had vanished without leaving any trace behind. As she searched the cabin, she discovered a journal hidden under the mattress. It belonged to a previous occupant who claimed the cabin was cursed, mentioning unexplained disappearances over the years. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed through the house. Jennifer froze, hearing footsteps above her head. Terrified, she barricaded herself inside the bedroom. Hours later, dawn broke, revealing fresh tracks leading away from the cabin, but none returning. When rescue teams arrived after days of radio silence, they found Jennifer catatonic, clutching the journal tightly. To this day, neither David nor anyone else who disappeared near Devil's Ridge has ever been found. On February 17th, 2014, a group of 5 friends embarked on a weekend fishing trip to Lake George, Minnesota. Despite warnings of unusually harsh weather conditions, the thrill of catching walleye beneath the ice drew them to venture onto the frozen lake. They drilled holes into the thick ice and set up their portable shelters, blissfully unaware of the danger lurking below. As darkness fell, temperatures plummeted further, causing eerie creaking sounds as the ice shifted beneath their feet. At around midnight, one of the men, Chris, reported seeing shadows moving across the surface of the lake. His friends laughed it off, attributing it to exhaustion or trickery caused by the moonlight reflecting off the snow. But then came the screams. One by one, the fishermen began disappearing into the icy depths. Chris managed to escape back to shore, though severely frostbitten, recounting how massive, dark shapes had surged upward through cracks in the ice, dragging his companions down with terrifying speed. Local authorities investigated but could not explain the phenomenon. Sonar scans revealed anomalies far too large to belong to any known aquatic creature. Chris never returned to the lake again. In subsequent years, similar incidents were reported along the same stretch of water, earning Lake George the nickname the Graveyard. To date, divers exploring its depths have uncovered remnants of fishing gear tangled in unknown organic material, but nothing more. On December 23, 2018, college student Emily Carter accepted a ride home from a friend living near Black Hollow Road, a notorious stretch of highway in rural Pennsylvania, infamous for accidents and ghostly sightings. The road was slick with freshly fallen snow, and visibility was poor due to heavy fog. Still, both girls were eager to reach their destination before Christmas Eve. As they drove deeper into the woods, their car suddenly stalled. Attempts to restart it failed, leaving them stranded in the freezing cold. Desperate, they decided to walk toward a faint light visible in the distance, hoping it might lead them to safety. What they didn't know was that locals avoided this particular section of road after dark because of its dark history involving a serial killer nicknamed the Snowman. When they reached the source of the light, they discovered an abandoned gas station lit dimly by flickering fluorescent bulbs. A figure stood silhouetted against the doorway, cloaked entirely in white. Mistaking him for a good Samaritan, they approached cautiously. But as the man turned, they saw his face. It was blank, devoid of features, save for two hollow eye sockets glowing faintly red. Terrified, they ran back to their car, only to realize it had vanished. Hours passed as they wandered aimlessly through the forest, hypothermia setting in. Eventually, search parties found Emily unconscious near a tree, muttering repeatedly, "He doesn't have a face." Her friend was never seen again. Investigators later uncovered evidence suggesting multiple disappearances along Black Hollow Road, dating back decades, all occurring during winter months. Today, warning signs mark the entrance to Black Hollow Road, advising travelers to avoid driving through after sunset. Yet reports persist of shadowy figures dressed in white haunting the area, preying on those foolish enough to venture too close.